Hi, I'm Tom Cherryholmes with the FujiNet project. After considerable procrastination, I started working a few days ago, starting on what will become the user's guide for the Atari version of the FujiNet. And I'm using a process that will essentially allow me to take and write the documentation in a very concise format with a lot of context that can translate very well over into multiple different types of media, such as being able to make a printed version, being able to make an HTML version that we can link inside of the Flash, doing an EPUB version for ebook readers, and so on. And for that, I've decided to choose the DocBook standard for this purpose. I use DocBook because it is a standard that was created in the 1990s and is still being used today by major book publishers to write technical documentation, and it is well suited for that task. If I had only concerned myself with wanting to make a printed version of the manual, I would have used something like Tech, for example. But since we're using DocBook here, I wanted to take and show a bit around the document repository and what goes into actually creating the content, so in case anybody wants to follow along and perhaps help out. If you guys have been following my videos here, yeah, I just switched over to Linux Mint with Cinnamon here. Because I quite frankly got tired of dealing with the brokenness of KDE, but that's a subject for another time. We have right here a folder called FujiNet for Atari users. And I'll put this over to the side. It comes from this particular document repository here if you want to take and follow along. If you're familiar with our GitHub, you can go FujiNet Wi-Fi, and there's a repository called FujiNet Manuals. And this is where we're going to be placing all of the individual manuals for our user's guide and the like. You can grab down a copy of it here, and what you will get in return, something that looks like this. Now, one of the things that's actually part of the process here, I've created documentation so that you can take, if you're running Linux, for example, or Debian, for example, you can install all of the needed packages that you need to do what I'm doing here. And for reference as well, I'm also using an editor called the XMLMind XML editor here, which you can grab. Give me just a moment. Oops, that was a mistake there. Oops. Which you can grab right here. I'm going to pull this tab over here. This is it's a closed source product, but it's free for personal use, and it really helps the process of working through DocBook documents here. And this is actually what we're going to be using for most of what I'm demonstrating here. You just take and download it, put it in a place, and then you can associate any DocBook files to it to use. But let's take a look at this from the text perspective. What does the source material look like? I'll open this up in Emacs so we can see it. And we can see that if you're familiar with HTML or XML, yeah, it's an XML document. But it's an XML document that has lots of context here. You can see, for example, who's the author of the book. There's an explicit tag for it. There's a section for the book dedication. There's a section for acknowledgments, and each person is labeled semantically with person tags here. This is all so that the style sheets that will take and process this can transform these things into more useful style attributes, or perhaps links or different things like that. that. It's all there so that you can give some sort of semantic context to the document that you're working on, which is important when you're writing technical documentation, because it needs to be concise and chock full of semantic context. Prefaces, and the book itself is going to be divided into multiple parts. This one is the user's guide, for example. Each part has a series of chapters. Each chapter has a title. You have paragraphs, and you have various figures and whatnot, which are built up of, in this case, media objects with images attached to them. And so all of this is literally so it can take and do things like build a table of figures automatically. There are other bits and pieces as well. You'll see, for example, we have what are known as index terms. These are special markups right here that aren't printed, but are put here so that when we actually take and place an index at the end of the book, the index can be built automatically with all of the correct page numbers and have everything, and basically have everything formatted and dealt with as the content gets pushed in. Page numbers will get updated, index references will get updated, and so on. But you might be, there's also, for example, various bits of markup so that you can mark up programming examples, as you can see right here, and so on. And the idea here is that we have, in addition to this particular file, we have a style sheet which specifies how all of the individual elements are to be styled for the print material, for example. We have this is a markup called XML style language, and it references a master style sheet right here that if you take and install the packages, this is on your system here, and these are all the master styles that when you take and use a chapter, when you use a paragraph, whatever, if nothing is specified in here, it will take and fall back to this particular style sheet. But what we've done here is we've taken this master style sheet, which has a whole bunch of stuff that's defined for us, and we're overriding it with our new values. In this case, the custom fonts that we want to use, whether or not we want to do things like force blank pages, how we want to take and label chapters. In this case, I didn't want to say chapter 1, chapter 2, etc., so I override that and get rid of the chapter label entirely. Put certain headings like table of contents, acknowledgments, etc. in uppercase, and to specify a highlight blue color for various things, such as titles, so on, table cells, that sort of thing, how lists should be handled, and so on. Finally, when we get ready to have the front cover and the back matter, that can be defined here on the style sheet as well. There's one more piece of the style sheet that's not immediately evident here, and that's where we are using Apache FOP to generate the final PDF that we're going to output. But FOP needs a configuration file. And what we're using the FOP configuration file at the moment for is to specify the explicit OpenType and TrueType fonts that I'm using for Optima LT standard. I have both an OpenType version here and a TrueType version here as well that it can fall back on. So with that, we take and then bounce back, and I have, as part of this whole process, a Makefile. Which, after defining a few things like the XSLT proc tool, the FOP tool, the configuration files, the source files that I want to use, and a little bit for some intermediate files here, because XSLTproc will create an intermediate file called temp.fo in this case that will be passed to FOP to generate the final PDF. We come down and generate the PDF. We call XSLTproc, give it the style sheet, give it my source file, and then call, and that generates the FO file, which we run through FOP to generate the final PDF. So what does this give us? If I take and open up a terminal here so you can see, we can go ahead and just run make. And it will render out the file. This right here, these can be ignored. There's some additional information in this particular open type font that I used that FOP doesn't know what to do with. It doesn't really affect the formatting at all, so it can be safely ignored. But once we do that, we have a PDF file that we can take a look at. And look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous, even at this particular point in time. It looks like a technical manual with some nice little accents, blue accents all over the place here. Acknowledgements, everything nice and neatly typeset. The table of contents basically built up for us. List of figures, list of different examples so you can go right to them. Preface, and then the user's guide, which has its own table of contents as well. Each part has its own table of contents. So, what is FujiNet? We have a figure right here, figure diagram, and we have our paragraphs are nice and justified, everything nice and neatly typeset. Apache FOP does a great job here. All the headings are in the blue that we specified here, but you'll notice that there are, because we have the ability to mark up things as, for example, formal paragraphs. We have this formal paragraph right here that has a header right here, but it's also rendered in blue because the style sheet asks it to. And we have term lists right here. In this case, we are talking about the different types of image files that FujiNet can mount. It takes and lists them out. Diagrams here, the virtual printer, diagrams for the virtual printer, and so on. All the different printers, bits in here, pieces, the modem adapter, the network adapter, and we can see right here examples of combining the sidebar along with the examples here so that we can admonish and embellish program listings. So this is essentially what we are, this is essentially what we're working towards. And if we come all the way back to the bottom here, we of course have a colophon here, which explains essentially what I'm explaining in this video here, how this book was made and where to get a copy of it. But also a fully functional index, because we took and bounced around all those index terms, put them throughout the content here. FOP can take and process these, XSLTproc can process these and turn them into an index page for us automatically with the correct page numbers. With that, I'll actually go to the last part of this video here and show how the editor how I'm using the editor to take and create content. If we take and open up the main DocBook file, for example, I have it set up to open up with the XML editor that I showed earlier. We can see that it provides a nice formatted view of the content, focusing on just the content without any stylistic rendering. Just enough so that you can see the individual headers for various parts, such as chapters, sections, and the like. But you can also see things that are rendered in line that you have to mark up, such as the index items that get pulled into the index. All the figures are present as well, and we can take and modify them, scale them up, scale them down as we need to, modify various attributes, and so on. So let's say I wanted to take and make a particular change. No problem. I can perhaps start writing up some bits and pieces for chapter 2. I'll just do something quick here. I can take and select this particular section down here, chapter 2, unpacking and connecting, and you can see that we have a little stipple pattern here indicating that this is an empty content element that you can click into that you can start writing text for. And if you look right here, we have a breadcrumb trail showing you the structure of where we currently are inside of the document, meaning that we're sitting inside of a paragraph tag which text can go into, which is part of a chapter, which is part of a part, which is part of the book. Okay. Conversely, I can take and switch different views here so that I can see, for example, the table of contents, so I can keep mind of the particular structure of what I'm working on. Or I can look at the document source itself, and you can see the relationship of where we are right now, where we clicked, and where we've wound up here. We have a paragraph tag that's all by itself that's about to get some content in here. Now, of course, I could type the content here in this particular view, and I could just as easily do that. If I switch back to the DocBook view, you'll see that the content has changed. That's not what I'm going to put here. I'll just simply type in some information. And we'll just say, for the sake of argument here, if I take and hit an enter here, it will take and create another paragraph for me automatically. Maybe I don't want to do that. And maybe I actually want to take and convert this, for example, into a list or something else, into a program listing, into maybe just a different content type. But no, in this case, what I will actually do is I will take and insert a list. And there are different types of lists in DocBook. You have itemized lists, which are bullet lists, ordered lists, which 1, 2, 3, 4, or with different with different particular admonishments, A, B, C, D, upper, lowercase, etc. You know, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and so on. Or you can have what we call a variable list, which are a list of terms. The printer list up top, the list of file formats that you saw up top, is a type of a variable list. So we'll take and make an itemized list. And it went ahead and converted this for me and gave me 2 elements right here. A FujiNet, a USB cable, and I can take and add additional list items. By pressing the list item here, a USB cable, a 2 gigabyte, an SD flash card for local storage. This user's guide, a getting started guide, and so on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. Now, now that we've done that here, I can take and save that, and then I can turn right back around, run make again, and we can see the result. So we have and unpacking. So now we have your FujiNet films with the following: FujiNet USB cable, SD card, flash for local storage, etc., etc. So that's an example of kind of how easy it is to take and do what you need to do when you're writing the documentation. It basically, the idea here is that we, again, separate the content from we separate the content from everything else so we can focus on writing the content. And then when we're ready, we can take and write the style sheets to take and make everything look nice on the different targets. So you've seen PDF, but I could just as easily do HTML and use DocBook to HTML, for example. I don't have a style sheet made here, so what's going to come out is going to look very plain, but with very little effort here, I'm going to take this DocBook right here, and I'm going to add in all this. Okay, great. We did all that, and we have an HTML folder right here. And we can actually choose, and a matter of fact, I'll actually take and do this a little bit differently. I want to take and make this not as individual files. I'll do this again. But I am going to make it make a single file here. No chunks. We come back. We have our FujiNet for Atari users here, and if we open it up, this is without any style sheet here, but we've gone ahead and made our HTML documentation. Still more to do because you really need to take and make style sheets here, make this all look nice, but this is all just very basic, and this was able to be done from the same source file. So this is why we did it. I'll go ahead and end the video here, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a bit of a glimpse into how I'm currently writing the documentation. And if you want to help, what you can take and bring to the table as well, install the tools and grab the repository and start helping if you want to. If you want to, feel free to stop by the Discord. So until next time, guys, have fun.